Hi, this is Phil Shapiro in Tacoma Park. I have to share with you a story of one of my computer students, Dottie Brown, who signed up for a computer class that I was teaching, a seniors computer class. She signed up at the age of 96. And then she loved the class so much, she took it again at the age of 97. It was a 6-week class that cost $10 here in the Tacoma Park Community Center in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And I taught this class with 2 volunteers, Jim Mueller and Jane Hawkinson. So there was 3 teachers in a small group class, and we had so much fun making fun of each other, the teachers, and the students really enjoyed this class. So here's Dottie Brown. Here she is in the class, and we have a Linux computer lab where people come in and use the computers 7 days a week that the public library runs this computer lab, and that's where I work. And then we teach this class for seniors, a beginner's computer class. So Dottie, this is how the story started. I received the roster, the enrollment roster, from Paula, who organizes these classes in the recreation department. And this is what it said. This was in the fall of 2012. I got this piece of paper. This was the top of the piece of paper. And I looked down on the list on this paper to see who was signed up for my class. And this is what I saw. So I had 6 people signed up for the class, and they were all female, ages 56 to 96. So I said, wow. I said, what am I supposed to do with this 96-year-old student who signed up for my class? I thought, that's quite amazing. I said, I should probably call her up and welcome her to my class. So the phone number was listed here, and I dialed the phone number, and I came face to face with my own prejudice. So when you're calling somebody who's a woman who's 96, you expect a small little voice, right? You expect a small little voice? Wrong. Big voice, big booming voice. I call her, I go, hello? And she goes, hello? I said, is that Dottie? She goes, yes, this is Dottie. Anyway, she smashed my prejudice with her big, booming, lovely voice and her huge, wonderful personality. And I welcomed her to my class, and I told her I was going to pick her up and bring her to the class because she lived about 2 blocks from the public library, and she lived on her own in her house, 96 years old. So I used to pick her up, bring her over to the class, and take her back home. And she used to drive a Model A car, a Ford Model A. So the Ford Model A came after the Ford Model T, and she drove one of these cars. She actually drove one cross country from Washington, D.C. all the way to Los Angeles, she told me. And that was before the days of the highway. The national highway system was built in the 1950s, so she must have driven in the 1930s or 1940s. She told me back then, when you were driving a car, if the car broke down, you'd open up the engine and you would fix it yourself. And so she proudly told me about the time she fixed her Model A car when it broke down. So I could tell she was a real geek. She loved fixing things. And here's another Model A car. That's another Ford Model A I found on the web. Her car probably looked a little bit more like the former one than the latter one here. And so Dottie loved the class so much. And when I picked her up, she was in such a good mood coming to my class. It was a 2-hour class Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to noon. And we used to take a break. Her mind was so vibrant and alive, and her personality feisty. Feisty but polite. Very polite, very feisty. It's an unusual combination. I told her she was a problem student in my class because she used to race ahead of the other students. When I was explaining things, she would race ahead, and then she would ask a question before the other people had a chance to practice. And I used to say, Dottie, please let the other people have a chance. And then she says, okay. She goes, okay. Anyway, she knew she was a problem student, and she used to apologize, and I loved to scold her because the scolding was both real and she understood that it was, She had a computer temperament. She loved computers. This photograph was taken when I was showing her some logic puzzles. There's some logic puzzles that sometimes ship with Linux called Tetravex. T-E-T-R-A-V-E-X. Let me show you them. I made a video here on how to play them. Here is my YouTube video on how to play Tetravex. It's a colorful, beautiful puzzle, so you can play them kind of easy or play them hard. You have to move the colors from the right to the left side and match up the colors. And then you can also get hints. Oh, here's my interview with Ellie Gruskin and Josh Rosen. Those are the people who wrote the book, the Beginner's Guidebook for Ken Logic Puzzles. Go and see this interview. These are very fascinating people. High school student Ellie and very, very talented elementary school math teacher Josh Rosen. Anyway, let's take a look. These are these logic puzzles. So I was teaching these logic puzzles to her in that photograph, and you can come back and look at this. If you're interested, come back and look on YouTube how to play Tetravex logic puzzles on Linux. Anyway, I was showing her these puzzles, and I said you can play these puzzles using hints. The hints make the puzzle more fun. And she told me, I don't play puzzles with hints. And I said, but Dottie, it's going to be more fun if you play it with the hints. And she goes, no hints for me. And I could not believe it. I could not believe it. That she loved to play something difficult. She loved thinking. And so this photograph was taken just at the moment she says, no hints for me. And I was laughing and she was laughing and I couldn't believe it. So, another thing I need to tell you about this computer class is that I was explaining how to double click a mouse because some of the people had never really used the mouse before. So I used an analogy. I would say double clicking a mouse like knocking on the front door, knocking on the door of your house. Knock, knock. Or I said it's like turning the keys of your car, like turning on the keys of the car. I said, but wait a second. I said, Dottie, when you started your Model A car, did you start it with keys or did you go to the front of the car and rotate the car to start it? She goes, well, on my Model A, I used to go to the front of the car and rotate, the engine to get it going. So I said, well, double clicking a mouse is like knocking on a door, or it's like starting a car. And then I realized that's the only time in my life I'm ever going to say that analogy. It's probably the only time in the entire universe people are going to use that analogy was in that day on that class, and we all laughed. It was pretty funny. So, Jane Hawkinson and I, we took a donated computer, an old Dell Dimension, and we took it to Dottie's house so that she could use a computer at her house. She had Verizon Fios at her house, so that's pretty incredible. She used to drive a Model A car in the old days, a Ford Model A, and now she's got Verizon Fios at her house. And I can remember when I was once visiting her, she told me, she says, Phil, I need a computer tablet. I need to be on the web when I'm watching TV. She goes, I'm watching TV. It's so boring. She goes, how can I watch TV if I'm not surfing the web? So she says, Phil, help me find a tablet. So I went looking for a tablet, but sadly her health was in decline. She passed away, I think, at the age of 98. And so I wasn't able to get her a tablet before she passed away. But what an interesting comment on her part. It really showed her geekness that she couldn't watch television without being on the web. And then she also told me when I was visiting her at her house, she told me one day, she said, would you like some banana bread? I just baked this banana bread today. And I said, Dottie, you like to make banana bread and you're about 100 years old? I said, I like to eat banana bread. And so this is going to be a great partnership. And we both laughed. And then one day I was driving her someplace and she told me something interesting that I listened carefully to. So I'm trying to remember the facts so I get them straight, but I think she had breast cancer in her 60s, and she had treatment, chemotherapy, I think, and radiation. And she told me that she had refused one of the treatments. I think it was radiation. She said, I just refused it. And she said, and that was 30 years ago. So I thought that took tremendous courage that she stared down the doctors and told them what she was going to do and not what they wanted to do. I thought that took tremendous courage and conviction and maybe some intuition that this is not what her body needed. And so Dottie taught me something there that I'm still trying to think about, that sometimes you just have to follow your convictions. You do not always need to follow what a doctor tells you to do. Although a lot of doctors tell you, most of the time doctors tell you things that you need to do, but sometimes you just have to say, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. And so, Dottie, we miss you. And it was such a privilege having you in my class.